Hey guys, thank you for tuning in and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to this album review. This time we've got the 8th studio album by long-running all-female country music group The Chicks, formerly known as the Dixie Chicks. This one is entitled Gaslighter. This is their first album in 14 years, the last being 2006's Not Ready to Make Nice. It's been a long time coming. This is the best-selling all-female band of all time, comprised of Natalie Maines, Emily Strayer, and Marty McGuire. And for the most part, I have varying thoughts on the overall album, but I will get this out of the way. It's good to have them back. Natalie Maines on lead vocal, and the band's overall harmonies are always irresistible and very well done. And of course, with renowned producer Jack Antonoff coming into the fold here, being the primary producer, it definitely adds a bit of a poppier and modern bent to it that is definitely square and definitely different than what's going on in modern country radio, and we'll touch more on that later. So let's hop right in. So let's start with the opening title track, Gaslighter. It was honestly a rush of nostalgia, to be honest, to hear Natalie Maines' voice again. She still has a very clear and concise tone to her singing voice, and despite the modern production, it still shines brightly. She can gracefully croon and then let it fly with daunting ease, and you can feel the hurt and the anguish and the pent-up frustration permeating from her being as she overtly lays a justified verbal beatdown of her estranged ex-husband, Adrian Pastor. Am I saying his last name right? Who cares? He's an asshole. The song becomes less of what could initially be perceived as an open-ended allegory on current events and becomes solely an anthem of healing wounds on your own against all odds. But the expectation that we could see something truly political from country music's biggest pariah is confirmed in the form of promotional single March March. Natalie Maines name drops Emma Gonzalez and the survivors of the Parkland school shooting a couple years ago, and crystallizes her contempt with the Trump administration as well as persisting anti-women's choice sentiment in the national government. And despite the overtly political musings and the uplifting call to arms that the Chicks convey here, this song, its release having predated the release of the full album, establishes a sort of dichotomy that personally is too big for me to notice. I'm personally of the mindset that these words, on their own, at least, are absolutely necessary in country music. Your average mainstream country radio listener or CMA fest-goer more than likely would benefit from having these words infiltrate their subconscious, but they won't. The Chicks were blacklisted from country radio following their well-publicized rejection of the Iraq War and the actions undertaken by the Bush administration. They really were the first victims of cancel culture, predating an era and time in which such a thing would be commonplace. But then again, Natalie Maines and company have said they don't really feel at home in country music anymore. It's hardly country, at least in the traditional sense, at least stylistically. But regardless, this will surely be lost on your average country music listener, and that speaks to just how toxic the culture of country music has become. Anyway, moving on. Juliana Come Down never really stays on any consistent melody until around the 2.5 minute mark, where the chorus really lulls you in. Here, Natalie Maines urges her children and the children of the other band members to not fret over a boy who might break their hearts, to put on their best face for the world. Strut the fuck around like you've got nothing to lose. If that line doesn't perfectly encapsulate and describe the Chicks' journey over the last 17 years, I don't know what does. This reaches almost frightening levels of reality and metaphor. Like, damn, that's too accurate. It's almost scary because, again, you realize the circumstances in which these lovely, powerful ladies were cast out and ostracized from country music. But again, it's a metaphor. Just like Natalie's father contributing quiet, still guitars in some of the album's later cuts, Hope It's Something Good and Set Me Free, that's a bit of a metaphor for a father providing solace to his young daughter in a time of distress. I would say that vast swaths of the album are quote-unquote girl power, but I don't want to be unfair and use what I think might be a bit of a shorthanded statement, like a shorthanded label for the album, I guess. Then we get to Everybody Loves You. This is a highlight in part because of the production. Again, Jack Antonoff, the primary producer here, and the poppier adult contemporary pulse is evident on tracks like this one. Those bubbly keys trade moments of prominence with the silky neo-traditional country guitar blocks. Anyway, this track is notable for the added solemnity in the lyrical content. A distraught Natalie Maines simply can't fathom why everyone loves her ex-husband and is so fond of him, and they can't see him for the monster he is, even as she's publicly divorced him and elucidated in quite detail the toxicity at hand and how her body just rejects the very thought of him, the very touch of him, and it makes her so uncomfortable. This track in particular was a gut punch and a tough one to sit through. Now, if the opening title cut, Gaslighter, left you with more questions than answers, Tights on My Boat will fix that right away. As for the composition, it reminded me more of a Maren Morris song. I Hope It Hurts Like You Hurt Me, Natalie strongly punctuates, narrating and reliving the painful experience of the night her husband cheated on her. I would say that these lyrics and these stories throughout this album would add a personal touch, but again, I don't think that statement does it justice. This is a breakup and a divorce album unlike any other. Natalie vows revenge, sort of. You're gonna get what you got coming to you, she proudly proclaims. But it's less about revenge and more about finding the strength inside her to transcend the heartbreak. And the subtle messages of empowerment are very inspiring. And then My Best Friend's Wedding, this is the last track I'll touch on just because it's another prominent moment elucidating the fallout of her marriage and everything. I know I jumped back and forth a little bit from opening cuts to later cuts, I'm sorry. Anyway, I wanted to single out this because, again, it's one of the most poignant moments overtly regarding Natalie Maine's divorce. She vows to outrun the wildfire that she sees coming, and again, I do vastly appreciate how she's able to disseminate the strength that was inside her all along and refuses to let that strength be underscored by how painful it must be to relive and sort of re-elucidate how her marriage came to an end. So, I mean, it's definitely inspiring to anyone out there, and it's needed, and for that, this album scores a lot of points just off of that alone. Again, in terms of the composition, it's the whole album in its entirety is mostly country. Some subtle banjo plucks are found plenty throughout this album with more neo-traditional undertones. Those things plant it firmly in the country category. That can't be denied. But the analog production, the poppier beats, and the synths def make it square. There are hardly any contemporaries to compare to because the Chicks will always be a martyr for the toxic culture of mainstream country music, and that in itself is an injustice. Against all odds, though, this is a solid comeback album. It's nice to have the only outright liberal voices in country music back to break the monotony, so that's good. However, I do have one little problem with March March. Now, the song's message and lyrics on face value were very inspiring to me. It's a very strong, very good call to arms. However, if you go watch the lyric video, you'll see that it urges you to end white silence and end systemic racism and police brutality, and you'll see the names of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Trayvon Martin, and then the names just come rapid fire, and that should really illuminate just how serious this issue is. However, and I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't be injecting my own personal politics into this, but again, this is my review, this is my perspective, so I have to be honest with you guys. They end the lyric video with telling you to urging you to use your voice and use your vote. Now, I would imagine that Natalie Maines and company are not particularly fond of Joe Biden. I understand this is not an endorsement. Hell, this probably isn't even an implication of an endorsement of Joe Biden. But when they urge you to use your voice and use your vote, I would imagine they mean voting for Joe Biden to get rid of Trump. However, that's not the answer. At the very least, it's not the answer to if the thought of eliminating Trump also means getting rid of what created him, Joe Biden's not the answer. Jimmy Dore just did a video, and I could link it in the description or one of the comments if you'd like, detailing how the crime bill that Joe Biden authored and the anti-marijuana sentiment that he's parroted his entire career and his history of racist sentiment and racist statements have led to just recently an Iraq war veteran was traveling through Alabama. He was pulled over by a cop. He had medical marijuana on him, but it wasn't in its original container, so that constitutes a felony. And one thing led to another. His wife lost her job. He lost his house, lost his car. Now he's doing 5 years in jail for a nonviolent drug non-offense. All tracing back to the crime bill and other anti-marijuana, anti-race, anti-black policies that Joe Biden authored into law when he was a senator. I honestly feel like the overarching theme of March March was lost on me because you can strike a chord and vow to end white silence and end racism all you want. But if you're going to vote for someone who is the biggest perpetuator of this systemic racist culture, the whole point just falls on deaf ears and it's lost on me, and I'm really sorry because the message at face value is correct. And I had a good takeaway and inspiration from it. But when I actually think about it, it just doesn't cut it with me. I'm going to give Gaslighter a 3.5 out of 5. I enjoyed the compositions for what it is, and it's all very well done, and these ladies are among the best groups in country music history, no doubt about it. But I did have some varying thoughts, as I said, and it's just my honest opinion, If you disagree and you would wish to say so in the comments, go right ahead. I won't delete any comments. I'm not against dissenting opinions at all. We can have a cordial discussion in the comments below. I'll respond accordingly, and I'm welcome to hearing not just about that, obviously, because that's irrelevant in some ways. Again, if you want to talk about the album in general, the music, that's what's important here. If you want to leave a comment about that, go right ahead, and I'll be glad to respond. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this review, smack the like button, leave a comment, subscribe, hit the bell to get notified when I upload a new video. Take care, and thank you so much for watching.